بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد الكبير الثامنة والستون الأمن من مكر الله تعالى. The author rahimahullah says, number 68, Al-Amnu min makri Allahi ta'ala. It's for a person to feel safe and for a person to feel secure from the makr of Allah Azza wa Jal. It's to feel safe and to feel secure against the makr, mim, kaf, ra of Allah Azza wa Jal. And this word makr, with these three letters, oftentimes is translated to mean plan of Allah, plot of Allah. Whether it means plot, whether it's translated to mean plan or plot, as people they say, brothers, they say, I was coming to you, you came to my house. And the brother smiles and he says, Allah is the best of planners. Allah is the best of planners. Or someone says that the kuffar plot against Allah. They plot against Islam. They plot against the Muslims. They conspire against the Muslims and Islam. Conspiracy theory. But Allah, khairul makirin. Allah is the best of planners and plotters. What's important is that we know is that there are certain names of Allah, there are certain attributes of Allah, and then we have the asma, then we have as-sifat, then we have al-af'al, actions of Allah. And last but not least, the broadest of those circles is bab al-ikhbari an Allah ta'ala. Pay close attention. First concept is to give Allah a name. Bab al-asma, to give Allah a name. Allah's name is Al-Aziz, Al-Kaba'ir, Al-Muta'al, for example. And then we have the second, which is Bab al-Sifat. They say that Allah Azza wa Jal lahu ilm, dhu quwwa. Allah Azza wa Jal has power, He has knowledge. Everybody understand this? Allah has mahabbatullah, the love of Allah. Everybody understand this? That's an attribute of Allah. And that's not necessarily giving Allah a name. Al-Muhib, Al-Habib, Al-Mutahabbib. But it's giving Allah an attribute, a quality, a characteristic. Then, number 3 comes Bab al-Af'al, the actions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not giving Allah a name, not giving Him a quality, but attributing to Him an action. Inna Allaha yuhib, Allah loves. Allah speaks. Everybody understand this? Obviously, the first 3 are relatively connected. Whereas if Allah Azza wa Jalla's name is Al-Aziz, He has the attribute of Izzah, of might. And if He has the attribute of Izzah, the characteristic of Izzah, of infinite might and power, He does yu'izzu, وهكذا تعزّ وهكذا. The different ayat with regards to Allah speaking about His Izzah. فَعَزَّزْنَا بِثَالِثٍ. Everybody understand this? So we have names, we have attributes, and then we have af'al, actions. Last but not least, the 4th ring is Bab al-Ikhbari an Allah ta'ala. Is to give general information about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. General information and not specific information. Please pay close attention. It's a very important aspect of Aqidah, and it pertains to the way of Ahl Sunnah, Ahl Hadith, in this chapter as well. And a common mistake that many people make on a daily basis, who claim to have the proper Aqidah with regards to Allah's names and attributes. Last is Al-Ikhbar. If someone said in a khutbah, and what are you going to do on Yawm al-Qiyamah when Allah asks you, why didn't you take care of your son? What are you going to do on Yawm al-Qiyamah when Allah asks you, why didn't you seek the knowledge that was presented to you and given to you? Where is the ayah or the hadith that states that specifically? Where is the specific textual information that Allah is going to speak to you directly and ask you a specific question, let alone how you're saying it and the manner in which you're saying it, and you're putting somebody in a khutbah? Everybody understand this? The person, the khatib, inshallah, he's not saying that Allah is going to say this specifically, in this specific tone, in this specific way to this specific person. But he's giving general ikhbar, general information about Allah that's based off of, Allah talks about, we will ask them on that day. On that day, He will call out to them. Everybody understand this? On that day, the mouths will be sealed. The hands will speak. Everybody understand this? The body parts, they will speak. The different ayats. So a person gives general ikhbar about Allah Azza wa Jal. General ikhbar about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everybody understand this? So we have 4 levels now. Obviously, the first level or the first ring is the tightest of them all. And it's unlawful to give Allah a name unless it's something that He specifically gave to Himself and or the Prophet gave to Him directly and specifically. Pay close attention. And the narration has to be authentic. It can't be something that's weak. It can't be something that's general and vague and inexplicit. Everybody understand this? To give Allah Azza wa Jalla the name Sabur, for example. La ahad asbar min Allah, the hadith says. No one is more what? Patient than Allah. Mentioned, before the nikah. No one is more patient than Allah. And then someone says Allah is a sabur. You can't say that. You have to say Allah is sabur based off of another hadith that's frank, sarih, and an ayah in the Quran. Everybody clear on this? Or Allah, if you say lillahi sabr, Allah has patience. Giving Allah a sifa. You can do that from that hadith. Everybody understand this? Giving Allah a fi'l. Inna Allah yasbir. Inna Allah la yasbiru anil asi. Allah is patient upon the sinner. You can do that. Giving Allah general information, speaking general information about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is more patient than you. Allah is patient with us all. We sin every day. We live in New York City. Who are you to get mad and angry at me? Where's the hadith that says anything about New York City? Everybody understand this? But it's general information. It's based off of something. But you cannot give Allah that name. Or you give Allah's name Hanan. Or people say Abdul Hanan. You can't do that. Or Al-Hafi. As Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam said, إِنَّهُ كَانَ بِي حَفِيًّا. He says he's Hafi with and to me. And it does not give Allah the name Al-Hafi. Or another example which the ulama differ is Al-Hadi. Can you say that Allah's name is Al-Hadi? Can you make yourself Abdul Hadi? And Allah clearly mentions وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَهَادِ. Allah says He will guide those. But it does not mean that He is وَهُوَ الْهَادِ وَهُوَ الْعَزِيزُ الْحَكِيمُ. Everybody understand this? So there is technicalities with regards to affirming the names of Allah. And that's the most stringent of the 4 levels. And it has to be clear and direct. If it's in the Quran al-Kareem, it has to be clear and direct. Everybody understand this? If it's in a hadith, hadith has to be authentic and clear and direct. Let alone the fact that there are certain names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala which are only mentioned when they're paired together. When they're paired together. And it's a mistake to single them out. Such as, an example of this, the ulama, they say Allah's name is Al-Qabid al-Basit. Allah is Al-Qabid al-Basit. And they say that you cannot necessarily split them up and call yourself Abdul Basit or Abdul Qabid. There's not a name that is thabata istiqlalan, that's specifically mentioned by itself. But these names are only joint and paired what? Together. And the meaning of the names is clearly meant to be together as well. Whereas when they are separated, it may seemingly seem as some type of imperfection. Or it may not necessarily be kamal mutlaq, absolute perfection. Everybody understand this? Absolute what? Perfection. Al-Qabid. Everybody understand this? He who holds, the holder. Al-Basit. Everybody understand it? Is not necessarily what? Kamal mutlaq. But Allah is Al-Qabid and He's also Al-Basit. Everybody understand this? Or for example, an example of this would be مثلا Al-Zahiru Al-Batin. Who Al-Zahiru, Al-Zahir Al-Batin. And you don't necessarily name yourself Abdul Batin or Abdul Zahir. But the names are always what? Linked together and never separated. That's not the case with Aziz or Hakim or Basir or Samir or Hamid. They're mentioned specifically, separately. But there are certain names which are always what? Linked together. And sometimes when they're separated, it may not necessarily give Kamal Mutlaq, absolute, total perfection. Everybody clear on this or not? That's in brief. It's not an Aqidah class. We don't have time to get into this in full detail, but it's very important. So therefore, that's with regards to Allah's Asma. Then we have the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the attributes of Allah. Certain attributes of Allah are not single as well, but they are together, they're collective. Certain attributes of Allah, la tutlaq illa fil muqabala. They are only mentioned in a response, recompense, and a reward or punishment for someone else. For example, Allahu yastahzi'u bihim. Allah mocks them. That was only mentioned after what? The munafiqeen what? They mock Allah. They mock Islam. They mock the Muslims. So as a reward, as their fruits, what they reap, what they sow, is that what? Allah yastahzi'u bihim. Allah mocks them. And it's not necessarily proper and scientific to say Allah has the attribute of istihza, itlaqan, absolutely. And Allah yastahzi, Allah mocks and makes fun of what? Absolutely. Restricted, no doubt. It's mentioned in Kitab and Sunnah. Everybody understand this? Everybody clear on this? Inna al-munafiqina, Allah says about the hypocrites that they're what? They yukhadi'un Allah. Wa huwa khadi'uhum. They try to trick and deceive Allah, but is Allah in actuality who what? Tricks them. And you cannot necessarily say, Inna Allah huwa mukhadi'. Allah is mukhadi'. Lahu sifatul khida'. Allah has the attribute of trickery. No. He has the attribute of trickery and deception and reward of what? Those who do that. Everybody understand this? This is extremely important. You cannot just absolutely give certain names and attributes or actions. And similarly, al-makr. Where is it mentioned that Allah plans and plots? Absolutely. In the Quran and Sunnah. Everybody understand this? Or whenever it's mentioned in light or in response to what? They make a plot and a plan. Everybody understand this? Similar to deception. When they think that we're going to make a plan to get away, to escape Allah's knowledge. Allah is not going to punish us. Allah is not going to reach us. We're going to hurt the Muslims. We're going to destroy the Muslims, destroy Islam. They made a plot to kill the Prophet Saleh, to kill this Prophet Lut, to kill that one, to throw Ibrahim in the fire. But Allah is what? Khairul makirin. You made a plan, you prepared, you set, you exhausted yourself to do harm to one of the prophets. But Allah, in the beginning and in the end, He's the one who had it what? All under control. And He let you think that you were making an excellent plan, let alone an excellent execution. And it is improper for a person to say, Inna Allahu al-makir. Allah is the plotter. Or Allahu yamkur. Or Allah has sifatul makir. Everybody understand this? This is an attribute that is only mentioned and attributed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in what? Abu Bakr? Attributed in what? Fil muqabala. Fil muqabala. Everybody understand this? So you can't just necessarily always say that. Sometimes you can say it. Sometimes you cannot say it. I hope that this is understood. As I said, this is one of the key points of what we believe about Allah Azza wa Jall's names and His attributes. And it's not just that simple. Whatever in the Quran you affirm to Allah, it's detail in the ranks of the people of knowledge. Everybody clear on this? So therefore, one that says the plot of Allah. Anytime you hear the word plot, it generally sounds what? Negative. A plot. Everybody understand this? But that's not necessarily the case. Khairan inshallah. So what's meant here, he says, Al-amnu min makri Allahi ta'ala, is to feel safe and secure from the makr of Allah. In other words, for a person to feel that Allah is never ever going to punish me. Allah does not have the ability to punish me. Everybody understand this? I have the ability to do whatever I want to do, and I'm going to live happily and get away with it. I'm going to get it what? I'm going to get away with it. Everybody understand this? A person has no consciousness of Allah Azza wa Jal, no awareness whatsoever. He doesn't care. He doesn't think. He feels totally safe from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His wrath and His punishment. Deeper than that, for a person to feel safe from Allah putting a seal on his heart. I'll miss one Jum'ah, 2 Jum'ahs, 3 Jum'ahs, and I'll just make Tawbah whenever I want to. Everybody understand this? I'll live for 30 years not praying like so many Muslims do. If they are even still Muslims, Allah knows best. But I won't make Hajj, I won't wear hijab, I'll drink alcohol, I'll just live as a fasiq my whole life. And then when my beard becomes gray, my back becomes weak, my beauty fades, my skin crinkles and wrinkles, then I'll put on a hijab and be pious and righteous. Who is the one who guarantees that you're going to live to 50 and 60? Who's that? That you won't die. But even deeper than that, because somebody says, well, how often does a 60-year-old person die and this and that? All right, no problem. How do you know that you're going to have the ability to make Tawbah? And how do you know that Allah is not going to seal your heart and leave you in your misguidance, as He says in the Quran? Leave them in their misguidance. Ya'mahun, Allah says, to wander blindly. Everybody understand this? To wander what? Blindly. Everybody clear on this? Who said that you're going to have the ability to just snap out of it like that? Let alone who said that you're going to even want to do it after you've tasted the sweetness of disobedience for 50 years and lived how you wanted to live and giving your nafs everything that it craved and desired? You've created this uncontrollable monster, and you just want to slay the monster like that when you're old and weak. Indeed, that's foolishness, and is the mindset of many Muslims today. Okay? Even worse than that, certain Muslims, they get old, and when they do start practicing the deen, it's unfortunate they come to bid'ah. They start practicing innovations. They start doing things that are whack and bogus. And they lived as a sinner for their lives. They try to be pious, and they still end up making bid'ah. Wala hawla wala quwwata illa billah. So this is a very serious problem here, and it's of two levels. The first level of this sin, this major sin, is kufr akbar. And the second level is just a kabira, ma'siyah. The first level is, if you have no fear of Allah absolutely, then you're no longer a Muslim. If you feel totally safe from Allah, totally safe from the plan and the plot of Allah, you are no longer a Muslim. And that's impossible for someone who has iman in his heart to ever feel like that. The second level is for your safety to be high and your fear to be extremely low. So low as if it's non-existent. So low as if it's what? Non-existent. In which, when you want to drink alcohol, you drink alcohol. Make zina, you make zina. Everybody, listen to haram, watch haram, eat from haram, earn haram. It doesn't matter. You just do whatever you want to do because your conscience of Allah is like this. But it's still there. And there's still some type of conscience that is pricked. There's still some type of voice or subconscious that you have. There's still some type of regret that you have. And there's still some type of hope for a better tomorrow somewhere down the line. Even if it's weak and the monster of sin has totally stomped out and stamped out and strangled, the fear of Allah Azza wa Jalla in your heart. Waliyadu billah. But it's still there. So that's the thing he's talking about here, what is from the Kaba'ir. And the first level is from the what? Kufr akbar. Everybody understand this? Khairan, inshallah. Now the author goes on to prove his points. He says, قال الله تعالى فلا يأمنوا مكر الله إلا القوم الخاسرون. Allah tells us, none feels safe and secure from the makr, the plot and the plan of Allah, except for the losers. People who are khasirun. The ayah clearly proves that someone who does this is a khasir. And if he's a khasir, if he's a loser, then that proves that it's a major sin. Because what's meant by khusran is the fire of hell. Waliyadu billah. Allah says, ذَلِكَ هُوَ الْخُسْرَانُ الْمُبِينَ. The clear manifest loss. It's not your wife, not your children, not your strength, not your possessions, not your material things, but it is you being a loser in hereafter. He then says, وَقَالَ تَعَالَى حَتَّى إِذَا فَرِحُوا بِمَا أُوتُوا أَخَذْنَاهُمْ بَغْتَةً. Allah says, and when they became happy, حَتَّى إِذَا فَرِحُوا, when they rejoiced in what they had, what they were given, Allah says, أَخَذْنَاهُمْ بَغْتَةً. We seized them, we snatched them, we punished them all of a sudden without any awareness. Now just stop and think about this today. The concept of rejoicing in what you have. The people who are not Muslim, they rejoice in what they have of technology, of strength, of medical advancements, of warplanes and aircraft carriers, of culture, of civilization, of art, of music, culinary arts, and the list goes on. They are proud of what they have, and what they have been given, rather what they have been lent, and what Allah gave them as a fitna. And oftentimes, this prevents them from accepting Islam. Why should we follow the religion and we have everything here? All of the Muslims from the Middle East come here. When they need surgery, they come to our countries. When they want to buy a car, they buy an American car. When they think of the standard of beauty, it's American or European beauty. It's not dark hair, dark eyes, wheat color skin. No. Blonde hair and blue eyes. Everything that we have, they want, they crave, they covet. So why should we follow their way? They have rejoiced in what they have been given, and Allah will surely punish them when they least expect it. The next ayah, the author says, وَقَالَ تَعَالَى إِنَّ الَّذِينَ لَا يَرْجُونَ لِقَاءَنَا وَرَضُوا بِالْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَاطْمَأَنُّوا بِهَا وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنْ آيَاتِنَا غَافِلُونَ أُولَٰئِكَ مَأْوَاهُمُ النَّارُ بِمَا كَانُوا يَكْسِبُونَ. Last but not least is the ayah from Surah Yunus. Allah says, verily those لَا يَرْجُونَ لِقَاءَنَا. It says, those who hope not for our meeting. They do not look forward to meeting us. In other words, they have no fear, no hope whatsoever. They're pleased with this lifestyle, Allah says. Radu. They're happy with the hayat dunya, like we just said. With medicine, with advancements, with traveling, with freedom, with democracy. They're pleased with that. That's the biggest, greatest thing in life. I go to school, I get a degree, I get married, I get a big house, I get a fancy car, I have children, I save thousands of dollars in my bank account, millions of dollars, I retire, I become old, I shrivel up, and that's life. That's it. That's the only thing that's important in life. This is a reality the Quran is talking about. And it's very sad when the Muslims have this attitude as well. Obviously, no Muslim is going to say this with his tongue, but they say it with their actions. They clearly say it with their actions. He has 2 sons or 4 sons. 3 of them are successful in the worldly affairs. And one of them is Hafiz al-Quran. One of them is a Talibah. One of them goes to go study. How does he treat the one who wishes to study? He treats him badly. The family look down upon him. They talk about him. They backbite him. They throw up their favors in his face. And look at the first 3 as my successful sons. These are my sons. And that one is my son. He wants to be religious. He's a saint. He's an imam. We'll come to him when someone dies. He can recite Surah Yasin. We'll come to him and ask him a trivial question and then mock his answer and tell him what the answer should be. But my son who's a lawyer, my son who's a professional basketball player, and my son who's a civil engineer, those are my sons. Those are people that I take pride in, that I'm happy for. This is the reality of many Muslims today, if not most of them, whether they're living in the Muslim lands or whether they migrate to the Western countries. And it's very sad, okay? It's very unfortunate. May Allah help us all. Allah says they don't hope for our meeting. They don't look forward to meeting us. وَرَضُوا بِالْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. 2 things he mentions about the worldly life. First is rida. They're pleased with it. Allah says, وَطَمَأَنُّوا بِهَا. Secondly, Allah says their hearts are at rest with the dunya. 2 things now. You can be pleased with something. This is a fine thing to have. It's nice to have. Charming thing to have. And then there's another thing when your heart is at rest. When you're stressed, when you're depressed, when you're sad, when you're anxious, the thing that gives you tranquility and sakina is the dunya. Money makes me feel good. A beautiful woman, a bottle of liquor, that takes away all of my problems. That's a very sad reality as well. Allah says, وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنْ آيَاتِنَا غَافِلُونَ. And those who are totally heedless from our ayat. Deaf, dumb, and blind, they walk around on a daily basis. What Allah says about this, I don't know. What Allah says about that, I don't know. The birds, the trees, the sun, the moon, the stars, the rivers, the lakes, the oceans, غَافِلُونَ, is of no purpose. Everybody understand this? It means nothing to them. Allah says, أُولَٰئِكَ مَأْوَاهُمُ النَّارِ. This, or the abode for these people, He says, will be the fire. That's going to be their resting place. That's going to be where they will retire and live forever, happily ever after, in the fire of hell. Allah says, بِمَا كَانُوا يَكْسِبُونَ. Allah says, because of what they used to earn, what they used to do. All right? In other words, Allah Azza wa Jal, He clearly mentions in this ayah, He doesn't necessarily directly mention actions, physical actions. But if you pay close attention, the things that Allah spoke about were all what? Metaphysical actions. Pleasure. Naam. Hope. La yarjuna liqa'ana. They don't hope for our meeting. Hope is the action of the what? Everybody understand this? Allah says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ لَا يَرْجُونَ لِقَانَا وَرَضُوا بِالْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. And they're pleased with the worldly life. Being pleased is the action of the what? Hearts, metaphysical. وَطَمَأَنُّوا بِهَا. Allah says, and they're at rest with the worldly life. That's also what? Metaphysical. Allah says, وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنْ آيَاتِنَا غَافِلُونَ. And those who are heedless from our signs. You being heedless is not necessarily a what? It's not a physical action. In other words, it's the exact opposite. You leave off something. You turn away from something, which is the product of what? Ghafla, of heedlessness. So Allah mentioned these things, and none of them are directly what? Physical actions. Pay close attention. Allah says about them what? These people, their abode will be the what? The fire. Because of what? بِمَا كَانُوا يَكْسِبُونَ. Allah says they will burn in the hellfire because of what they used to do. In other words, lack of hope for Allah. In other words, pleasure with the dunya, finding tranquility in the dunya, heedlessness from Allah's signs, it led to what?
To the fire.
No. It led to what?
It led to abandoning
Actions. No, it led to them doing things of sin and of evil. Everybody understand this? The metaphysical led to the what?
physical.
Actual physical. Pay close attention to this eye here. All right. Allah says that they did things with their hearts, their minds, their souls. But then when He says they will burn in fire, they will dwell in the fire forever, He said because of what? Yaksibun, what they used to earn of the things in their hearts and their minds. But let's pay focus or attention on the what? The physical. In other words, if you have these negative emotions, these negative elements, these negative thoughts and feelings, 9 out of 10 times it's going to lead to what? No doubt about that. And the opposite is the what? Opposite. You hope to see Allah. That's going to push you to do what? Fast, Hajj, Jihad, Sadaqah, Zakah, ilm, respect your parents. Everybody understand this? You're displeased with the worldly life. That's going to lead you to spending your money in Allah's cause, because the money can't remain forever. I can't be buried with the money. These are my basic responsibilities. My family has food, has drink. They're comfortable. They can live. They can do what they need to do. The rest of it, that's excess, goes where? To the cause of Allah Azza wa Jal. Everybody understand this? I'm not at rest with the dunya. No matter what I get of luxury, of pleasure, I never ever feel the same. I have to get up and work. There's people who are envious. There are people who are jealous. There's always a rat race in the dunya. No matter what you get, there's a bill, there's a tax, there's a fine, there's a ticket, there's a car accident. You're never ever pleased with the worldly life. The true believer, and he knows that the only time which I can really sleep and rest, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, is in the hereafter. That's the only time when it's totally no responsibility, no sin, no liability for me eating and drinking and sleeping and doing anything else. If you have these emotions and these thoughts and these beliefs, it's going to force you to do what? Those good deeds. Everybody understand this? This is the end of the chapter. Major sin number 68. Allah Azza wa Jalla surely knows best. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.